Let's take a look at the lineup for Heat 3A.
Jimmy King has put the Llumar window film boat in lane 1, but he has the Red Rocket right beside him. Then out in lane 3, George Stratton and the Appian Jeronimo. Mike Hansen has made great starts so far this season in that white boat. Here he comes, making another one, TJ.
Hansen won a heat last week in Evansville, won a heat earlier today, and is looking good here through the first turn.
Here's a great look at what's facing Jimmy King in lane 1 with the Budweiser off to his right. That wall of water leaving him a very narrow lane, TJ, and he does a nice job of getting the Llumar through there. That's not as easy as driving your car.
Bear in mind, 3 laps here on these heats, and Dave Vilwalk on board with him in the Miss Budweiser has already assumed the lead here as he heads under that Madison-Milton bridge. Kind of a unique setup. He'll go back under that bridge when he comes back around and heads down the front straightaway. A little bit of a different course setup. We've been mentioning the longer straightaways. Does that really give them that much more of an advantage with that acceleration we've seen from that red boat, Steve?
Probably the opposite, because the top end on the various boats is pretty close to the same. Budweiser's big advantage is in acceleration, which would be a bigger advantage on a shorter straightaway, and through the turns they are so quick. Now these turns in Madison are very tight, and if anything, when Dave Vilwalk can choose his arc through there, I think that gives him an advantage. These straightaways are so long, TJ, the boats reach top speed at about the half point, and after that the driver is just hanging on.
Another issue too is the fuel flow situation. That has cropped up a couple of times. We've talked about that before on the broadcast. We'll get into that as the race goes on too. Got to be careful about how much fuel you're using in relation to what's going on. And look at Jimmy King having to hang on for dear life almost in that turn, Steve.
He's hollering, "You leave me a lane, leave me some room," and Dave Vilwalk did. He probably legally could have washed him down right there, but he left some room for Jimmy King to get the Llumar through that turn, the gentlemanly way of proceeding.
See rockets under that bridge at almost 200 miles an hour. You'll see the challenge that faces him as he's about to have to make that turn. Watch the hard turn to the left, keeping things under control. Very tricky if the air gets under that boat, as it has before for Dave Vilwalk. That boat can become airborne, which can spell disaster. So got to be very careful of that in the turns.
Particularly, as we said, on these very long, very fast straightaways. The canard, that wing across the front of the boat between the sponsons, is a very important piece when you're at these high speeds. The driver controls that with his left foot, and he can actually use it to lift the boat a little bit in the turns and to settle it down a little bit if it gets loose on the straightaway.
So far, Miss Budweiser has yet to lose a race this season. Heats, finals, they have been perfect, and you notice now they maintain the lead here in Heat 3A. Dave Vilwalk and that team having an outstanding run this entire year, not just this weekend in Madison, Indiana.
The white boat you saw running on the outside, back just a bit, less than a rooster tail though. That is Mike Hansen in the Jones Racing U9, and that's a boat that Mike's doing a very nice job bringing it along. We'll see him challenge. There's the canard we talked about, TJ. You see the left end of it, and Dave controls that with his left foot. Right now he has it lifting the boat just a bit, and should he get loose, he'd depress on the pedal a little and bring the nose down. They like to keep that canard fairly neutral, but they can use it to change the attitude of the boat.
Coming around the turn one final time to wrap up another win, this time in Heat 3A. 400 more points for the Miss Budweiser team. They're going to do it again, this time in Madison, Indiana. Quite a roll for the Red Rocket. Yet another victory for Dave Vilwalk and for crew. They win Heat 3A easily, Steve Montgomery.
The white boat coming up to the right of the Budweiser. A good effort for Mike Hansen. And the U9, Jones Racing. Mike and Lori not here this weekend, but they'll be pleased with that finish, I'm sure.
Let's take a look at the results from Heat 3A. Miss Budweiser victorious. Llumar window film hung on for third. George Stratton and the Appian Jeronimo coming up fourth. Here are the overall point standings for the day. This very important as these boats try to qualify for the final.
You know, if you think back to last year at this time, you weren't having this much fun, you remember?
Yeah, I sure do. I wasn't having fun at all. But that's all right. Today's a new day.
Things have gone very well, and you're using T5, saving the new bullet for next week.
Yes, we are. You know, one of the most dangerous race courses is right here. Everybody wants to win the race in lane 1, and in first turn, can't be done. You got to go on and race the boat and let it run free through that corner. That's one of the toughest corners on the race circuit.
You got one heat to go, and you'll win the 50th annual. That'd be quite an honor here in Madison.
That would really be an honor, and their 50th, and I think it'd be my 126th, won't it? Something like that, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, that run may have been good enough to get you into the final race. Your thoughts?
I'm hoping that was good enough to get us on the front row. She's a good old boat, this Llumar window film team. The guys have done a great job all day with what parts we got. And we just keep sticking it in there and hope for the best.
Talk a little bit about the conditions as the day has gone on here. It obviously has gotten a little rougher.
Personally, from the first heat to this heat, I think this is the best water I've seen all day.
Take a look at George Stratton's ride, the Appian Jeronimo, damaged, Steve, to the back end.
That delamination taking place on the wing, they'll replace that part. They should be back.
We're getting ready for Heat 3B. That's next.
We're back in Madison, Indiana. Heat 3B is on the water now. Kim Gregory, a very interested spectator here because his Appian Jeronimo, driven by George Stratton, will be in the final unless Dr. Ken Muscatel beats your York Heating and Air boat with Mark Webber in the cockpit. Would be an upset you wouldn't want to see right now.
No, we wouldn't want to see that. I don't wish Ken any ill, but we're going to look for Mark to win this one, and that puts both boats in the final, and that'll be just great.
That would be quite a story to have both the Las Vegas-based boats in the final, TJ. 3B is on the water now.
So the boat's going at it, and again, if you're just joining us, that York Heating and Air boat had problems with its rudder in qualifying. They weren't even sure, Steve Montgomery, if they were going to be able to race, yet they're trying to get it done in Heat 3B. You look at Mitch Evans in the Master Tire ride, the only piston-powered boat that is out here. These boats gathering up, trying to get some points, trying to get into the final. There's Charlie Wiggins in the hometown Miss Madison. He wants to be in that final race and impress those home fans if he can.
And the interesting thing we referred to there, the Appian Jeronimo, driven by George Stratton, the way the points have come together right now, in the four-boat final, the Appian Jeronimo would be in unless either the Miss Madison or the Miss Free Eye is able to beat the York Heating and Air. So Mark Webber can do his buddy George Stratton a big favor by winning this heat.
So he's actually hoping his teammate wins instead of him being able to win. Well, Steve Montgomery had a chance to chat a little further with Kim Gregory in this week's Hydrospective.
Is unlimited racing what you thought it would be when you were observing it from the outside? Have you had surprises at all?
Oh, I think the biggest surprise is trying to actually stick to a budget. The unknowns, as if this morning, you know, blowing the rudder off the back of the boat and hitting a log. That's a $15,000 item down the tubes. And those kind of things, everything on an unlimited boat is expensive. So every time you hurt something, it's expensive. It's hard to get enough money in the budget and still try to win. And that's the challenge.
At this point in the season, with the two-boat operation, you've had some good heats. Where are you as far as your happiness, frustration level? In the middle somewhere?
Oh, probably somewhere in the middle. We're still trying to get used to this new fuel system, and it's playing havoc, I think, with everybody. The new boat's is about right where we thought it'd be. We want to make sure by the time we make the turn back west that we've got it wrung out, but I think we'll be there.
In the lights and the other classes of racing that you've been in, you didn't really have a super team. Sometimes you were the super team, but you didn't have a big budget operation that you were chasing. Is that different, frustrating? How does that register with you?
Well, it's like I tell everybody, when you're chasing Miss Budweiser, you're chasing an equal to anything there is in NASCAR, kart, Formula One, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that they do things right, and they've done things right for years, and they've got their act together. So when you go to chase them, you better get serious. And it's tough. It's a tough thing to do.
Has been a tough thing to do, and overcoming problems has not been easy, as Kim Gregory was touching on. When you got problems with a rudder that you have to fix, these crews were even sharing parts, having to try to get that done this weekend and get things up to speed. You take a look at the Miss Madison trying to get primed here in Heat 3B. We'll have Heat 3B for you when we come back here to Madison, Indiana, in just a minute. Welcome back to Madison, Indiana. Trouble for Dr. Ken Muscatel and the Miss Free Eye team.
Well, there's the doctor in the pits with crewman Jim Bakke, not where he wants to be. That'll leave it up to the Miss Madison. If anybody is going to keep the Appian Jeronimo out of the final heat, it'll be the rookie Charlie Wiggins, who's out in lane 3, making a pretty good start, but he's got to beat Mark Webber in the York Heating and Air, and that will be a tall order.
difficult situation. Mark Webber, teammates with George Stratton, has to win the race for him. Meanwhile, the Miss Madison trying to spoil things. As you look up high, the O'Doul's eye in the sky, you see how important that opening turn can be on that inside lane. Mark Webber able to take control here in Heat 3B from the very beginning. Meantime, Dr. Ken Muscatel's weekend has just been one of problems. Let's find out what the story is. Ken, a very frustrating weekend obviously comes to an abrupt end here in the final heat. What happened?
Well, you know, this is the last heat of the regularly scheduled. I mean, we'll try and fix this and run the provisional. Pretty unhappy right now. Just wouldn't go. That's simple.
Frustration on that man's face, Steve Montgomery.
He's had a couple of tough events, but overall they have brought that boat a long ways from Havasu, where you'll recall it would not get out of its own way. They are the holder of the new world record for a mile at 205.494 miles per hour. Charlie Wiggins, we haven't mentioned, is driving in a lot of pain from the incident in the last event at Evansville. His legs are very, very sore, barely able to get in and out of the boat, and doing a nice job here in the Miss Madison.
Keep in mind the hatch on the bottom of the boat came loose while at full speed, so water up into the cockpit, and yet here he is in the following race, right back in the Miss Madison in front of the hometown fans. You see the lead that Mark Webber has as we approach the top of your screen. They go down the back straightaway. If you're just joining us, long straightaways, and Mark Webber in the York Heating and Air. Problems for them at the beginning of the weekend, but that boat seems to be running well.
They really caught a break, TJ, because when they hit the log and took out the rudder, that normally tears the transom, or at least part of it, off the back of the boat. That is something you cannot repair in a weekend and come back. They were able to get the boat fixed because the transom had held. That's Mrs. Webber, by the way, who likes the way things are going.
Lori Webber, talked to her before the race. She said, look, I get nervous at these things. I have to pace. Get away from me. We gladly oblige as she looks on there. And Mark still doing very well down that front straightaway. Can Charlie Wiggins make some type of a move here to put the pressure on? That's the real question.
The key for the boat in second place is to stay right beside the wake of the boat that's to your left. Otherwise, you give him more of an advantage in the turn. And I noticed on the last time we looked from the O'Doul's eye in the sky that Charlie did a beautiful job of not taking the turn any wider than he had to. Watch him now. That's just perfect, TJ, right on the edge of the wake of the boat in front of him. And that's a guy who's a rookie doing a great job.
About to say only his second race, and so he's already familiar with what has to be done in the proper line to take all of those maneuvers, those positions. Very critical in terms of time and speed. So amazing that a guy who is just in his second race already knows how to stay as close to that line as possible. But the real story is up front. The York Heating and Air, Mark Webber in command. You look up high on this race course. They go up under the Madison-Milton Bridge and come back around and back under the bridge again.
Been doing that for 50 years, and remarkably enough, nobody has ever hit one of those cement pilings, TJ. Apparently, it's easier to get by them than it looks like it would be at 195, 200 miles per hour. They got to go by very quickly.
So there is your winner in Heat 3B. The weekend just keeps getting better for Mark Webber and the York Heating and Air crew. They are victorious. Charlie Wiggins in the Miss Madison will finish second. But again, the win for the York Heating and Air boat is good enough for their teammates, the Appian Jeronimo and George Stratton, to be able to get into the finals. That's exactly what they needed. And we take a look at the results. Even though the Miss Madison finishes second and the Master Tire third, Miss Free Eye down in fourth, that's good news for the Appian Jeronimo as they are in the final.
Were you aware that your teammate needed you to win that to put him in the final?
Yep.
And you did?
Yep.
Might we see a little teamwork here in the final heat?
No. No way.
Couldn't happen.
I don't believe so. We haven't discussed it. It can't happen.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Well, even though Mark Webber denies it, look at the York wing on the Appian Jeronimo boat. That truly is teamwork. Those guys are working together to help each other out this weekend here in Madison.
The boats are on the water for the running of our Unlimited Lights final. Charlie Wiggins has had a very busy day driving the Miss Madison Unlimited. Now he's on the water in his light boat, the Earl's Performance products. He'll get a good challenge from Randy Haas and the Miss Compare. The Unlimited Lights final when we come back to Madison, Indiana.
Welcome back to Madison, Indiana, the BELTERRA Casino and Resort Indiana Governor's Cup here in Madison, the Unlimited Lights final. These lights did not race Steve Montgomery in Evansville. They're back on the water this time around, and Charlie Wiggins, a guy that has made his mark in the lights, is back in the lights here as we look from the O'Doul's eye in the sky, off to a big start.
White boat on the inside, that's the Country Boy, driven by Tom Thompson. The blue boat is our old friend Randy Haas, Flipper they call him now, after a couple of times upside down last season. That's the Miss Compare. On the right side, the other white boat is the Propulsion, driven by Scott McGregor, and you see Charlie Wiggins moving out into the lead. Now Randy will challenge. He's a real lead foot, and he'll chase Wiggins as hard as he can. Charlie is really getting beat up on this little boat. It's not as smooth a ride as the bigger Unlimited, TJ, and you know the guy has to be in a lot of pain, but still, it's foot to the firewall for Charlie Wiggins.
For those that are not familiar, these boats smaller and lighter. Obviously, that's why they're called the lights here, running in this race. And there is Charlie Wiggins, who last week in Evansville had the problems that we talked about before, doing double duty, running again here in the lights race and running well in the early part.
These boats, and you see Randy Haas coming up very close now to that buoy at the apex of turn 1. These boats weigh about 2,200 pounds, a little over a ton. The big boat that Charlie just got out of weighed 3 times that much. These are big block automotive engines making a lot of noise and a big crowd favorite.
How much of an adjustment is that for a driver to go from a heat in a larger boat to going into the smaller, lighter boat and having to race competitively in a championship?
Well, Charlie told me, oops, the Compare slows down. We've lost our challenger, and now it's all Charlie Wiggins. But to go back to your question, Charlie told me last week that getting in the big boat, Miss Madison, the biggest difference he noticed was that rough spots in the water that used to be a problem weren't for the big boat. He could pretty much drive right across them. Now he's got to pay attention to the river perhaps a little more than he does in the big boat.
Yeah, believe it or not, the bigger, faster boat would be easier to drive. Is that what he's telling us? And right now things are easy in the Unlimited Lights final. Charlie Wiggins pulling away from the rest of the field, now almost with a half a lap lead as you take a look at the battle now for second place.
These boats capable of straightaway speeds above 150 miles per hour, and you got to remember that's about 1/3 as much boat as their big brothers, the Unlimited, so they definitely get your attention when you're going fast in one of these lights. Now we have Charlie Wiggins out ahead in the boat that he and his dad Milton own, the Earl's Performance Products. In second place now, Tom Thompson in the Country Boy.
Birmingham, Alabama's very own Charlie Wiggins up high in the O'Doul's eye in the sky, trying to get back into the winner's circle. Very successful Unlimited Lights driver, now making his debut with the Hydros, but even as part of this weekend goes back to the smaller boat. Very, very impressive as he makes that turn down the Kentucky straightaway.
Coming up on a back marker, I believe that is Scott McGregor in the Propulsion, running in 4th place, and Charlie is going to lap him here on this lap, and he's going to go by Randy Haas, who is floating up here in this turn in the Miss Compare. The blue boat just shut down, and there you see it coming into the picture. Charlie Wiggins will go by Randy Haas, and he knows now, if he didn't already, that there will be no challenge from his old rival Randy.
Charlie Wiggins steps into the lights category and wins. Got to be a big confidence builder after the problems in Evansville to step into the Unlimited Light category again and come up with the victory here on the Ohio River. And let's take a look, as you take a look in the background, at the problems that the Miss Compare had, unable to finish. Meanwhile, Earl's Performance Parts on top in the Unlimited Lights final. Steve Montgomery has a happy Charlie Wiggins.
Would this be a little more fun without the pain?
Well, there's still a good bit of pain out there. After a couple laps, it got pretty rough, but crew did a good job getting the boat ready without me. I pretty much had to stay in the truck all weekend, and they did everything we needed to do to get in the winner's circle, so hats off to those guys.
How does the old boat feel after driving the big one?
Well, it's fun to be out front, but it's a lot more reactive to all the water conditions. It just bumps off every little wave out there, so got to really watch it.
Well, you got to really watch Charlie Wiggins, the job that he has been able to do. Randy Haas, a frustrating final race. They had problems and not able to get the job done here in Madison. Meantime, speaking of Madison, Charlie Wiggins out of one boat, getting into another one, the big one, Miss Madison. Will they be able to contend here in the final for the Unlimited Hydros? We'll find out if Miss Budweiser can continue their perfect streak. Can their perfect record remain intact, or will there be a stiff challenge from a York Heating and Air boat that has looked very good this entire weekend? Or is it Miss Budweiser yet again? We will find out when you come back here to Madison, Indiana. The Unlimited Hydro Final here on the Ohio River is next.
back to Madison, Indiana, the Ohio River, and the final heat of the Belterra Indiana Governor's Cup. The boats are on the water for the running of the final heat, TJ, and it's interesting because 2 of the 4 boats in the front row are teammates, George Stratton in the Appian Jeronimo and Mark Webber in the York Heating and Air. They'll be joined by Dave Villwalk and Miss Budweiser and Mike Hansen in the U9. Will we see some teamwork there from the Gregory camp? Well, they deny it so far, but we shall see. 2 trailer boats. They are Jimmy King in the Llumar window film and Charlie Wiggins in the Miss Madison. So a 6-boat final on the water, but only 4, TJ, in the front row.
There is that Llumar window film boat. Jimmy King battling here in Madison, Indiana. You were mentioning about teammates a moment ago, Steve Montgomery. They obviously have some type of an advantage. How much of an advantage, we will find out. This boat has been the strongest boat all season long, the Miss Budweiser.
The only way those teammates can do any damage to the Budweiser would be to be together inside in lanes 1 and 2 and make the Budweiser run out in lane 3, and then they'd have to both make perfect starts, because if Villwalk gets out ahead of them, there won't be a thing they can do. So that will be a big story. How will they line up at the start, TJ?
Look on board with the Llumar window film. Dave Villwalk seems to be a master at getting that inside lane for the starting position and the rolling start that takes place at the beginning of the championship race. Back on board with Charlie Wiggins in the big boat this time, the big Miss Madison. Okay, get your props running for this week's Alamo Almanac. Ready, set, race. Alamo will get you to the finish line with a smile. Here's the 3rd member of our crew, Jim Hendrick.
Thank you, TJ. This marks a half-century of racing here in Madison, Indiana. 50 events of unlimited hydroplane racing here on the same Ohio River. It's been quite a history. The most memorable race goes back to 1971 and the Gold Cup. The hometown boat, Miss Madison, supported by the 14,000 owner residents of this mid-American town, took on the highly financed giants of the thunderboat world. Driver Jim McCormick and the all-volunteer crew received help from Harry Volpe, who came east to set and tune the Allison engines. The Allison had powered the World War II fighter planes. The combination set up by Volpe and the Madison crew set up the most emotional victory in the history of the sport. An underdog victory, if you will, and the crowd went crazy as McCormick and the Miss Madison took the checkered flag. This fall, the Cinderella story of the 1971 Gold Cup, the movie called Madison, will be at your local theater. Don't miss it. For the Alamo Almanac, I'm Jim Hendrick.
And the commissioner of the sport, Dr. Ken Muscatel, met his wife at the making of that movie. She was the casting director for the movie Madison that Jim was just talking about. There's Miss Budweiser. Can they do it again? We'll find out in a moment.